by the power of coming out 15 years too late and bad marketing. I'm going to bomb! So I just got out of Masters of the Universe, and what did I think of it? It's not a bad movie. It's a movie that, if it came out pre pandemic, would have probably found an audience. But unfortunately, summer blockbuster movies like they are really hard to do. Higher ticket costs are way too much for just for a simple roller coaster ride movie, unless you got a good reason. Streaming is cheaper, and then on top of that, the turn 80s toys into a summer blockbuster kind of died out 10 years ago. This movie has an uphill battle and development hell that make Duke Nukem seem like an easy to do story. So let's get into that, but first, my thoughts on the classic He Man and some of the debates of this movie. I guess I should start with my thoughts on the Filmation cartoon, as it does have a lot of how this movie was made. It was kind of made with a loving parody in mind, and some of the debates going online. Some people going in, He-Man is super serious and it needs to be dark. And what you think was just Filmation having very limited budget for some of the camp. And the other going, the Filmation cartoon was campy and silly from the get-go. For myself, I only watched Masters of the Universe, what I found on VHS as a kid, and only watched the complete series in the last month or so. My thoughts on which side is right is, well, both of them are correct. Here's the thing. I think a lot of hardcore Masters of the Universe have their favorite episodes from that show all favorited and on standby to watch whenever they want to watch. And a lot of these great episodes stand out almost 45 years later and will stand out really well another 45 years from now. Prince Adam No More, Problem with Power, A Tale of Two Cities, Origins of the Sorceress, and Hunt for He-Man are all super great episodes that take the show's lore and character issues really seriously. And I have them favorited so I can watch them again too. They're really great. For example, in the last one, Hunt for He-Man has He-Man getting poisoned and so weak he can't hold his sword to change Cringer into Battle Cat. So he's helpless with only the protection of Cringer, this old man, and his 10-year-old grandson against Skeletor, who is actively chasing him, burning down villages trying to get to him, and threatening to vaporize the kid when he catches up to him if He-Man isn't handed over. Okay, so it's not vaporize, it's teleport to a slave dungeon, but we know what the writers were intending here. So, really great dark episode of the show shows that it can be completely serious. However, next episode on my Fandango list has the same Skeletor taking a circus hostage because he doesn't want the rest of Eternia to see it because he's super angry it never stops by his home. Yeah, it's as stupid and silly and as painful to get through as it sounds. At any rate, there are plenty of cheese camp memes and serious lore you can do, and I think the movie does okay at balancing it, but it could do much better. So, anyways, let's go to the plot synopsis. The movie starts with Skeletor attacking the city of Eternios, which the movie does a good job of making it look like the Filmation series, as you do see a lot of the familiar buildings. Although one big change is Castle Grayskull is not out in the forest, it's connected right to the end of the city. Anyways, Skeletor attacks, captures the royal family, but Adam gets away with the power sword and sent to a portal to Earth. Well, what happens when you give an 8-year-old boy a sword and tell him to hang on to it while going through a magic wormhole vortex? Of course, he's going to lose grip of that sword, and then he spends the next 15 years looking for it while growing up on Earth. Having to get a job at an HR manager, which has someone who has worked with corporations. There are some super funny jokes around that while looking for his magic sword to get home. He does manage to find it at a comic shop called The Fright Zone, which, yes, that reference did make me laugh hard. But the sword doesn't send him back immediately. Rather, it summons Tila, who picks him up the next day, right about as he's about to get arrested by the cops for destroying said comic shop and destroying the sword. And that's the Earth segment right there. It lasts about 20 minutes. It's short, sweet, And outside the comic book, a few good fourth wall breaking jokes with Dolph Lundgren make these scenes go by fast. We're back to Eternia. Adam changes into He-Man, which he doesn't start calling himself until the end of the movie, and we start seeing some good action. So that's one good thing. For those who are afraid he was going to be stuck on Earth, nope, it's not even half an hour into the film, which is good. And there are some other things I like the idea of doing, but doesn't end well. So for the talk of toxic masculinity, they're just trying to do a dive into a few things that make He-Man He-Man. For those, again, who did not watch the 80s or it's been a while, Lou Scheimer, the creator of the cartoon, based He-Man off Superman. It's no big surprise that one of his main storyboard creators and one of his writers would go on and create the Batman and Superman animated series of the 90s. But one of the things is He-Man is a pacifist. He states several times he hopes this is the last time he has to transform and fight as He-Man. Here's where they both succeed and failed. They need to have a bit more levity instead because there's so much of this played for laughs, which is kind of a shame. If they had the one big scene and point they made about this issue, I think it would have stuck better because there was supposed to be emotion in this scene, and because I couldn't take anything seriously due to the humor, it didn't stick. Anyways, basically, Adam is a person who is wimp both by Earth and Eternian standards, and has to learn how to use this new power he gained responsibly to protect others. And he decides, since he now has the power of a god, he should go off cock, lose his temper, act recklessly, and just attack Skeletor head on. I won't spoil what happens, but I will say those mistakes do cost him dearly. So is it woke or trying to make a woke argument or emasculate him? No, in fact, it's not a bad lesson that the whole idea of might will always make right always leads to horrible outcomes. It's just not done good enough to land the way it should, which is kind of a shame because I would have really loved to have felt emotion on this one scene. Most Masters of the Universe fans will know what I'm talking about when they see this scene. But it also balances this part out with a few other messages about masculinity, mainly Man at Arms kind of telling him he has to strengthen up because a man must fight to protect his family and the things he loves, which is true. And then another part later on, when the sorceress kind of comes to him during a very dire time of need and tells him why she gave Adam the power. It's not that she felt like Adam would grow into the fiercest of the champions. He wasn't the strongest person she ever chose as champion, but he understands what it means to be weak and to empathize with others and knows how to talk. So basically, what the movie's main point is that a man needs to know how to talk, when to fight, what to fight for, and if you can avoid fighting, you should, but if you can't, then go all out. And the movie does a pretty good job balancing this point, or at least it would have if it wasn't for one thing. But there are so many jokes, it's kind of hard to take seriously. Not saying that all the jokes are bad, I laughed a lot, but you do have to have some levity, or the audience won't know what to take seriously and what's a joke. For example, of a good joke they make when Adam first transforms, Teela yells, "Yes, Eternia's champion has finally arrived! We're saved!" Because Adam's stunned by his sudden transformation, he gets sucker punched by Trapjaw, and Teela's like, "Nope, we're so screwed." That's a funny joke, and one I would keep in because Adam gets his bearing on his new power and then proceeds to beat the crap out of Trapjaw. But another joke comes along later that shouldn't be in it. Even though I laughed hard, it's a laugh that comes at a price. So in the trailers, we've all seen a scene where Adam's trying to get the rest of the Masters to trust him and help him bust out of Skeletor's jail. And he succeeds in doing this by basically combining the rest of the Masters' power and blowing up their cell. They walk out in slow motion while the Queen's song, Princes of the Universe, is playing. It's an epic scene, there's slow-mo, and if they played it straight, it would have been freaking awesome. And it would have been great. This is the Masters learning to trust this scrawny kid who they had a hard time believing as a kid. and are now having even a harder time because he's still a wimpy adult. Instead, what they do is, as this awesome song is playing, they stop and start hacking up spit and dirt because, well, the explosion kicked up a lot of dirt. It's a funny moment, but it kind of ruins the point, and it's that these characters desperately need to start trusting Adam. He may be a wimp that if he got into a fist fight with the Gnat would win, but he can use his brain and strategize. So even without He-Man, he's still useful. That lull kind of costs all the emotion and support for the third act because you never bond with the characters or see these characters bonding. That's an example of it going too far. Okay, so let me go through the rest of the video, going over 3 questions I'm pretty sure are on all the fans' mind. How is Skeletor? Let's face it, He-Man is Teemu Superman a lot of the time in the Filmation version. It's Skeletor that gets memed by the likes of Isaac Wells and Shaniosity. How did they do with him here? Not bad. If they're going with the Filmation look and feel, they should have gone more with an Alan Oppenheimer voice and not a Ben Diskin performance. Don't get me wrong, I love Diskin's performance as Skeletor, but it's really tricky to pull off that Skeletor well, and I think Leto does a decent job. His timing's on point. Skeletor steals the show every scene he's in. He throws out the insults, acts like him, and they even give him a little depth. He's not after power because he wants everything. He wants more power because he's scared he will lose everything he has. So he's a very insecure individual, and that explains his bullying behavior. And yes, he does bully his henchmen, do everything you think a good Skeletor this version does, and he's always entertaining. Kind of ironic that Jared Leto is the worst Joker ends up being one of the best Skeletors, while the best Joker, Mark Hamill, ends up being one of the worst Skeletors. If I have to level criticism though, it isn't Leto's Skeletor, it's the gal who played Evil Lynn. She doesn't have much presence. Evil Lynn is Skeletor's second in command, and usually if Skeletor's not there but she shows up, the heroes are still in for a hell of a brawl. Even He-Man's there because she's still a major threat by herself. Never got an ounce of threat from her, nor was there any chemistry with her and Skeletor, so yeah, she is easily the worst part of the film, unfortunately. The second thing that may be on a lot of people's mind is there a talk about Adam having a missing twin sister around, and does she play a part? Now I'm going to go into spoilers here and say yes, no. It's a mid-credits scene. Man-at-Arms talks to Marlena and says, "We got one of them back home. Maybe someday we will find the other." I like the scene, but rather than doing what I think should have been done, which was go into Castle Grayskull and show that there is a second sword, this one with the gem in it, it instead cuts to said sword with gem of it glowing with some purple swirling effects that we've seen in the She-Ra transformation scene in the old 80s cartoons. We see a blonde woman with a cape standing in front of a green screen version of the Fright Zone, the one from the 80s cartoon show, not the comic book from earlier, and someone asks if she's still Force Captain Dora, and she turns around and says not anymore. Again, jumping a gun a little bit, it means if we do a movie, we won't see Adam doing anything to win his sister back to his side, as well as a possible live-action transformation into She-Ra for the first time to save her brother she just found out she had, and does so frantically to save him, like was done in the animated series. That's unfortunately been taken away from us now. And the third big one is Orko in the movie. See my response to She-Ra above. He makes a quick appearance at the credits to do the moral of the day, which is actually kind of against what the parables of the original Masters of the Universe animated series delivered, as there were several episodes that said don't judge a book by the cover, and people can be able to change, so be willing to forgive when they are able to. Instead, Orko's lesson is if you have a skull for a head, you may be the villain. Ha 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 ha. Not funny. Anyways, I don't think this movie deserves a bomb. I think it's an okay movie. It's way better than Revelation and Revolution, but not as good as 2002 He-Man. If I had to compare it to a classic episode, I would say it's Journey to Stone City, an episode that did not take itself seriously enough to deliver on its full potential, and most of the Skeletor memes you see online come from the episode. If you're a casual fan of the Masters of the Universe 80s show, or a fan who does completely love the 80s show, warts and all, you will like this movie okay. If you're a hardcore He-Man must stick to the lore, it needs to be super serious all the time, stick to the 87 movie. Let me know what your thoughts are on this movie.